Can folks in the Microsoft Teams hear me fine? Hello?
I can hear.
Oh, yes. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Just making sure. Yeah, and for folks just walking in, feel free to grab dinner. There's some pizzas, there's some brownies, and some drinks too. So yeah. Oh, never mind. No pizza left. The perks of being here on time. And thank you all for being here so on time. We're gonna just wait a couple minutes and then we will go ahead and get started with the all right. Mine looks like it looks like.
There we go. All right. Hello, everyone. So we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order here. All right. And with that, we'll move to the first item on our agenda, and that is approval of the minutes. Do I see a motion to approve the minutes? See a motion from Stu. Do I see a second? I see Oh, second from Eric. Perfect. All right. And with that, we will move to our first vote. This will count as your attendance vote for the first half of the meeting here.
Back in the days, yeah.
All right, perfect. That vote is now posted here. Although maybe in the wrong team there. Sorry about that. Accidentally posted that in announcements.
Oh.
Hello. All right, we'll get that posted in the correct channel now. All right, there we go. All right, so do you approve the cycle 6 minutes? Yes, if you would like to approve the minutes. No, if you would not like to, and abstain if you would like to stay out of this vote. And I'll give that vote about 2 minutes. Okay, with that, looks like we have a requisite amount of votes in. Has anyone in the chamber not been able to vote on this issue that has the ability to do so? All right, seeing no objection here or on the teams, I will move to close this vote. And with a vote of 39 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 0 abstentions, this motion clearly passes. All right, and with that, we'll move to the next item on our agenda, and that is an officer report from our student body president, Naya McAdoo. Naya, as always, you'll be allotted 10 minutes.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, I just want to start by saying thank you for being here. Really happy to see all of you. I know it's been a very trying semester, and I've really just appreciated your guys' like continued work in Senate and being present and being here and being involved. So thank you. And then yeah, I can go ahead and start. So we've hired our new executive staff member, Faith Lopez. She'll be taking over the government relations director position. Excited, yes. Yes, we are very excited. I've been working on the Women's Leadership Conference with the rest of the Women's Leadership Board, and that's been coming along really great. I've been really awesome to see like all the stuff the other members have been doing, and so that's estimated to be on March 31st. Attended a strategic planning meeting with athletics that was mostly focused on like fundraising efforts and involvement with endowment. Attended KBOR about 2 weeks ago, met with the other SBPs. We just discussed our goals with KBOR, Higher Ed Day and Week, and then we're also establishing a new subcommittee with all of the university government relation directors, because they're usually the ones who take point on planning that. I've been meeting with various student groups and students on campus just to discuss KU and Lawrence, student affairs as a whole. Working with various executive staff on different projects that they'll be doing and just stuff we'll be closing out the semester with. I met with Jill Hummels to discuss communication plans, how to better reach our constituents, and then just like overall communication efforts across campus in general. Outreach efforts to students. I've just been trying to be focused on how to get students more involved in the various student senate committees and boards. And then, yeah, just planning for winter break and the work we'll be doing over that to plan for next semester. Our DEI director met with the J School to discuss the new degree requirements around language. The Title IX Town Hall was postponed just so we can utilize break to extend more outreach to get more students involved in that, and continuing to work with the admin who do that direct advocacy work. Working with Teach for America and planning for the DEI retreat, and then reaching out to the academic affairs to discuss the KU core DEI requirements and what the process along that looks like. Our policy and development director successfully carried out the warm clothes drive. We had excess clothes to donate to the trans clothing closet with the SGD. Working with other executive staff to solidify planning for the self-care night, which will be December 8th at 5:30 in the OMA. Which will have like drinks, snacks, movies, games, and then also working to plan like a fireside chat type of thing that will be following all like full Senate moving forward. And so there will be opportunity just for like executive staff, but also like any senators and stuff that want to be involved in that. We'll also have the opportunity to work with our policy and development director. Our communications director has been working with our DEI director and myself to spotlight Indigenous community members through our social media, submitting final website edits to IT, which will hopefully be approved over winter break, working with myself and also SUA for next semester merch for Student Senate, getting a post calendar made with options for outside entities to submit different announcements and stuff they want us to advertise for them on social media. Our internal affairs director has been working with myself and Sarah Bowman. The new Silk director, let's clap. We love to see it. Thank you, Sarah. But yeah, working with Sarah to create the outreach survey for the committees and boards. So far, we've had 61 students who've responded. So we're really excited about that. Working with the outreach board members, myself, to just further expand outreach efforts across campus on how to get students more involved in Senate and connected to resources. Our student body graduate vice president met with GSAP today and gave support for the new constitutional rewrite with the new constitutional rewrite. The Watson Library Building Committee is going to be meeting one more time during finals week, and that's going to be the final meeting for the semester. So far, it looks like the new structure plan is going to be serving students even more than it already does. Attending University Senate tomorrow, and will serve as parliamentarian to discuss academic policy and procedure committee recommendations, making sure senator voices are heard and that we can continue advocating best for these important campus departments. And then GSAP met with the provost right before break, which went really well. And then they'll also be having an in-person meeting following finals. Our treasurer and associate treasurer just has been working with our finance chair, Sadie, to make sure fee review is coming along timely. Meeting with just lots of different student groups to discuss funding and resources from Senate, meeting with the fee managers to discuss upcoming fee review, and making sure those fees are being accurately represented. And then our government relations director finished the plans for holidays in higher ed, getting acclimated to the office and the new job duties and turnover, getting connected with Jack Klein, who's our DC representative, about the upcoming Big 12 on the Hill event, and then plans for advocacy at the K-Board level and working with the other university GovRel directors to plan that higher ed day and week. That is all. Do you guys have questions?
Any questions for our student body president? Either here or on Teams?
You guys can always text me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say, just as a reminder as well, for the rest of the session, if folks on Teams could raise their hands when they'd like to speak, that would really help me, especially as we get into other debates. But yeah, as of right now, thank you very much, Naya.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, and with that, we move forward to our consent agenda. Do I see a motion to approve the consent agenda tonight? I see a motion from Wesley. Do I have a second? I see a second from Julia. All right. And so with that, is there any objection to proceeding to a vote on the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, we will move forward with a vote.
Can I say something real quick?
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a couple of new senators on board, so just for your information, the consent agenda is anything that's less than like it's just general funding or less than $1,000. So it's not as contentious in that way. It just all gets approved in a block. But when it's in the regular agenda, those are like more contentious and that do need more discussion. So that's what you're voting on right now.
Thank you for that, Humberto. And with that, we now have it posted onto the general here. Please vote yes if you would like to approve it, no if you would like to deny it, and abstain if you would like to stay out of the vote. All right, it would appear that we have the requisite number of votes here. So is there any objection to ending the voting process here in the chamber and or on the teams? Has anyone not had the chance to vote yet? All right, seeing none, we'll move to close this vote here. And with a vote of 38 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 3 abstentions, or sorry, 39 in the affirmative, 0 negative, and 3 abstentions, this motion clearly passes. All right. And with that, we'll move on right along. And the next bill here for the regular agenda is a bill to move all Student Senate transactions to the KU Shared Service Center.
All right. I'm gonna pull up this bill real quick. And Hamad, are you gonna be able to present this?
Yeah, I can go ahead and share my screen if you want.
Awesome. Oh, sure. That works too. Let me open here this. And oh, so fancy.
I know.
Yeah, and you can share your screen now.
Can you guys see this?
Yeah.
First off, thank you very much to all those who have helped in the past couple of days. As we have transitioned a lot of our stuff from the staff associate to the treasurers due to a leave of absence. So what this bill is doing today here is, so I'll read it off here in just a moment, but the result of this and why it's coming, well, Humberto, do we have to go into committee as a whole first?
Oh, actually, yeah, we do have to do that, Ethan. But it wasn't introduced in committee, so we're introducing it right
Oh, but it was introduced under StudEx as acting as a standing
committee.
committee.
Right, that's right. Yeah, so we don't need committee of a whole, actually.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. So this bill is, so
before you start, I will say that you have 4 minutes and 30 seconds left for presentation.
no problem.
Yeah.
So we have a couple people here today that are from the Shared Service Center, but to talk a little bit about how Student Senate transactions happen after students approve bills through this chamber. There's 10 days for the student body president to veto them, any funding bill. During that time, myself and the treasurer's office works to get that funding from the state into a Senate account, basically filling out paperwork for the university and making, basically giving this student group assignment within our tracking system. After the 10 days, the student group then submits information around what they want to order. Then the staff associate will then go out and manually purchase this stuff and then also reconcile it. Historically, this has been a process that Student Senate has owned, but a couple of years ago, the university implemented a new service called the Shared Service Center, and which will be a one-stop shop for all university departments and units to basically perform transactions for the university. So at that time, Student Senate didn't move over because Student Senate is considered its own entity in certain areas of the university. But why now? Why consider moving with a bill that is being introduced in full Senate? It's because our staff associate is currently on leave of absence, and the processes that were used by the staff associate are not really doable by this treasurer's office in the way that she did it. So when we were consulted with advisors of Student Senate on the finance side for required campus fees, we were recommended to look into Shared Service Center. While this was something that was on my radar in a meeting that was scheduled actually this past Monday, that was scheduled weeks ago, it just happened to work out really well with the unexplained leave of absence. So we were like, okay, we can probably move up the timeline a little bit more. But one of the conditions of moving towards the Shared Service Center would be that we'd be actually going to Shared Service Center, but there's no going back. So just going off the whereas clauses, the current processes for transactions and purchases puts us in a very considerably vulnerable and very easily prevents Senate from fulfilling its financial duties when unexpected circumstances arise, such as a staff member being out of the office. Senate's current processes for all transactions and purchases is very costly and not time efficient. So there's many times when Senate submits stuff to the university, and then the university comes back and says, hey, we need some more information or some more documentation around stuff. But with the Shared Service Center, that would be a little bit more streamlined because they would be assisting in making sure that we submit the right information the first time around. This is a cost-saving option just because the Shared Service Center has agreed to not charge Student Senate for this service. And when I asked, will this be for the long term, like, is there any chance in the future that Student Senate could be charged? It was said that we would not because they get most of their money from state funds from departments that already work with them. So it doesn't make sense to use student fee dollars when this is something that's already being supported well by units on campus. So it would be something that is not costing us to implement. And that, as far as timeline goes and accuracy of purchases, that would also increase because we're having professionals help us with these transactions moving forward. And as new technology and information comes out about how we should be making transactions to help us with audits and in compliance with state laws, federal laws that are that affect us and the required campus fees, the SSCs would be there to assist us with explaining those. So there is a service learning agreement that I'll share, but I wanted to seize my time to allow people for questions. And yeah.
All right, there are currently 6 seconds left in the speaker's time, so if there are any questions, we'll need a motion to extend time. Any questions in the chamber regarding this legislation? I see a motion from Holly. All right, Holly has brought up a motion to call question on the bill. I see a second from Farzad. All right, and with that, it's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any objection in the chamber and or on the teams moving forward with this legislation? All right, seeing none, we will go ahead and move towards a vote. Okay. All right, the question will now be thrown to the general. Do you approve Senate Bill 2022-037? Oh. Yes, if you would like to, no, if you would not like to, and abstain if you would like to stay out of this vote. And I will let that run for a few minutes here. All right, and with that, we do have the requisite number of votes. Is there anyone in the chamber here or on the teams that hasn't had the ability to vote on this issue? All right, hearing no objections, I will go ahead and move to close this vote. And with a vote of 40 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 0 abstentions, this motion clearly passes.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your guys' winter break.
Thank you, Hamad. All right, and with that, we'll move to the next item on our regular agenda here, and that is a bill to fund the Student Senate keyless entry, authored by Holly Hall. Holly, you'll have 5 minutes to present this.
Okay, hi everyone. This is going to be very quick because, you know, it's about to be finals week and hopefully we don't have to be here all night. But basically, when Hamad presented the keyless entry before, the biggest component to why we need the keyless entry wasn't really brought up, and that was kind of my fault, so I'm gonna bring it up now, which is safety. Obviously, you all know this semester it's been a tumultuous one, and we as executive staff, specifically our great student body president, even Naya, received many death threats, and that's not good, and we don't like that. And that's kind of what proposed to us the idea of having the keyless entry was to keep our office safe. Right now, our office isn't safe. It's unlocked during the day. We've had reporters come into the office just be able to walk in. Anybody can walk in. We now have 18-year-olds on our campus that can also carry guns. You know, we want to keep our office safe. And so we are asking for $4,212 to put in keyless entry that will keep our office safe, because only students and people that work at the institution will be able to get in unless we let them in, hence keeping us safe. And also, it can be utilized in the future. Right now, obviously, as has been mentioned, our staff associate is on leave, and they left very suddenly, and we didn't have entry to the office. We didn't have a key we had keys. The 5 of us had keys, but if we're not there, the top 5, like me, Hamad, Naya, Ethan, or Umberto, with our key to open the door, none of the other staff can get in because our staff associate isn't here right now and won't be back until January 8th, I think. So if we implemented the keyless entry system, it'd be a lot easier, it'd be a lot safer for all of us. I know there's some of you that think it's a waste of money, think we should use a presidential fund, whatever. Number one, the presidential fund is up to the president, so that's my answer to that, and the president's used that fund for other things. Number two, the other thing that I wanted to bring up is we haven't used, and I think Hamad can probably, when we get into questions, bring this up, but we haven't used a lot of the student funds. Student groups haven't been applying, so we do have the funds. Oh, Lena can't hear me. I'm sorry, Lena. Okay, well, we do have the funds available to do this, and it's something that will help student senates for the long run. So that's all I really have to say. I'm open to questions, or I think Ethan has to say that, so yeah.
Yeah, we have about 2 minutes left for questions here, so does anyone have questions here in the chamber or on the teams? All right, you had your hand up first. What was your name? Matthew?
Hi, Matthew.
Perfect. Oh, yes, and we'll get this mic to you first so that folks can hear you online. Oh, yeah.
Oh, that was... I can repeat the question if Matthew says it. I'll repeat it for people to hear. Go ahead.
I understand why you need it, but why not improve key handling practices so that there's not constantly missing keys or being lost, or just not enough keys available instead of spending $4,000?
Oh, okay. So Matthew's question for people online was basically, why are we asking for keyless entry? Why don't we just look after the keys? Looking after the keys isn't the issue. I have my key. I know where it is. It's on my keychain, which is next to Naya right now. We're not losing keys. The loss of key isn't the issue. The issue is our staff member is on Federal Medical Leave Act, which means that we cannot get the key from the staff member or contact them. It's not that the key is lost. None of us have lost our keys. The reason why we're asking to have the keyless entry is so that we have a safer way, and so that the staff members that do not have access to the front door keys will always be able to access the office without the 5 of us having to be present all the time. That's why. But we haven't lost keys. I know that was brought up last time, but recently nobody's lost a key. Oh, yeah. Well, in the past that has happened, but right now that hasn't happened.
Right. Well, with that, we're going to have to move on to the next questioner here, Camden. But we can come back to you if you'd like to be re-added to the speaker order. Perfect.
Hi, can you hear me? Hi, Holly. So if the only issue in the present is that your staff supervisor is on medical leave, then why not spend roughly $120 and rekey the locks instead of almost $4,500?
Okay, so that was just a scenario, as in why, like, she doesn't have the key, we can't get it off her. Yes, we could spend another $120, but the thing is, over time, when you keep spending $120 here, there, and everywhere, you might as well spend the $4,000. Like, it doesn't make sense to me as to why this is so contentious in the Senate, because this is something that's going to benefit Senate for years to come, and we have the money to do it. And I don't really personally me, and this might not be, I'm not very good at this, so I'm just going to say what I'm going to say. Like, if we can give $5,000 to someone to shoot something into space that's never coming back again, I don't understand why we can't spend $4,000 to have our office safe. Like, you're not the ones in the office. Like, Naya literally got death threats. Like, if you're a Black woman in America getting death threats in the place that you have to work to support your students on campus, maybe you'd think spending $4,000 was a good idea.
And with that, we are out of time. Is there a motion to extend speaker's time or a motion to vote on the bill? I see a motion from Camden for
Speaker time.
how much?
5 minutes.
5 minutes? All right, do I see a second? I see a second from Turner. Is there any objection in the chamber to extending speaker's time by 5 minutes? Or on the Teams? Oh, I see a hand up on the Teams. Does anyone have a hand?
It's one of the 16 people.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's me, Sarah.
Sarah? Oh,
Um,
Sarah, perfect. You want to be added to the speaking order here?
Yes, please. Thank you.
And then I saw you raise your hand again. Did you want to follow up, Camden?
Let's Sarah go first.
Well, I'm saying, do you want to follow up to be added?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Awesome. Okay, yeah, Sarah, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, just regarding the discussion, the previous discussion there, do you guys have an estimate on how much money has been spent on changing the locks in the past?
That's a Hamad question. Hamad, could you answer that?
For this school year, so the biggest problem is 2 scenarios. One is when someone gets removed from the office, and then the other is when turnover happens and people don't return their keys. So I believe this year we changed 2 locks prior to this exec coming in. So it would be about $250 for just this school year, and that comes out of the office budget.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Next, we'd have this in the back here. If you get the mic there. We love our rather spacious Senate chambers. Naya has their hand up. Perfect.
Are there any are the maintenance fees accounted for in these $4,000, or is that not accounted for? And if there are maintenance fees, do we know how much they are?
Hamad, that's a you question, but I think, and Hamad, you can say if I'm wrong, but I believe that once it's programmed and it's in, that's it. So it would be like $4,212, and then we don't have to pay anything else.
What was the question?
Is the Hamad? The question was: is the 4,212 like total, or will there be like other charges in the future?
There's no subscription to this service. If there was any type of maintenance, it would come out of the office budget. But this is something that's being used across campus, and facilities said that the system that they're using is pretty much a very sturdy system. And if there was a need for any type of repair or like unexpected costs associated with the repair, they have the supplies on campus to fix that on site. So it wouldn't be there wouldn't be any large costs associated with anything.
All right, next in speaking order, we have Connor. Maybe I got that wrong. Sorry, was it you in the pink shirt? You were in the speaking order next.
Okay.
I'm sorry, did I get your name wrong?
My name's Peyton.
Peyton. Okay, got it.
Hi, Peyton.
I got relayed the wrong info.
I'm Peyton of All Scholarship Hall Council.
Hello.
I just want to ask, I'm new here.
Yeah.
Is this office exclusively for exec? Do you mean to hold this?
Oh no. So, hi, Peyton. To answer your question, the keyless entry would allow any student with a KUID to enter the room. It just to enter the office. Sorry, it just wouldn't allow other people like.
So someone who wasn't a student.
Yeah, so someone that wasn't a student or doesn't have a KUID, like for example Sarah at the back, who is one of our advisors and director. I think director is the right word of SOC. Sarah would be able to get into the office. So it's just our office is open to any student. You want to come in at 5 o'clock on a Tuesday, you're welcome to come in. It's just stopping people that don't have business, outside people, from coming in.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for your question.
Next in the speaker order, we have Giovanna. Although we do have about 30 seconds left of the speaking time, so extension Camden. By 5 minutes, do I see a second? All right, I see a second from Farzad over here. All right, and so with that, it's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any objection to this action?
Hamad, can you answer Cynthia's question by typing an answer to her online, please?
Yes. All right, and since there is no objection, we'll extend speaker's time by 5 minutes. Giovanna, you can go ahead with your question.
Hi, Giovanna.
Hi, Holly. So you mentioned that you couldn't use the presidential funds, I think it's the word that you...
The presidential funds have already been assigned, yes.
Okay, so I want to know, like, what are some examples of what the presidential funds are used for?
Oh, sure. I can definitely bring that up. So, well, I think that might be an answer for Naya, but I don't know necessarily how this pertains to this conversation. But, for example, the presidential funds have been used to put money towards students at Watkins Health Center, I believe. I don't know if I'm the best to explain that because Naya can. I defer to Naya.
So far this year, so if you need to be president, sometimes presidents don't use the fund at all. Yeah, so far this year, the presidential fund has been used to establish, like, working with Andrew, Sadie, and Hamad, and they can give you more details if you want. But two endowment accounts have been established with $2,500 each. One was for Watkins to assist students in like basic medical fees, and then the other was for equal opportunity funding through endowment. And then I'm also working with Dr. Durham Student Affairs and the SGD Center to also allocate funding to support the trans clothing closet. So it's really up to each president on what they want to use it on. It has to go to initiatives on campus. The other thing that the first thing I had used it for this year as well, in working with APRMA, because APRMA didn't use his fund at all, was also making sure that the executive staff had accessible parking to the building, because this is where we work on a daily basis. And so parking passes were bought and allocated for each of the executive member positions, just so that it was more accessible. So, yeah, realistically, like, yeah, I could use the fund for this, but quite frankly, like, I want to use the fund for DEI efforts on campus and how to, like, better support students directly. And so I just think that there's other things that I want to focus on. So putting that presidential fund towards, whereas this is something that can easily be funded through Senate. So.
All right. Thank you for that, Naya. In terms of the speaking order, right now I have Naya, Cynthia, Stu, and Camden down for speaking. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this issue? Matthew? All right. I'll get you up here. Anyone else in the chamber? Over here, Evan. Perfect. All right. And yeah, anyone else? Oh, you'll speak to. What was your name? Enki. Perfect. All right. Yeah. Perfect. All right, Naya, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, so it's more like a point of clarification because I had heard somebody ask about like rekeying the offices and stuff. I think that this would also be a great way for accessibility purposes, also because like this past year a challenge was getting executive members to come back in the office and drop their key off, and then because of that, like we also had to allocate stuff. Like, so it's also a point of like, if previous staff members are not coming in and dropping their key off, it's something where we have to either wait for them to come and drop that key off, which like this past summer literally took weeks. Whereas this would be something where the student would have immediate access to get into the office that way as well. So.
All right, next would be Cynthia, but I'm just going to go ahead and read out Hamad's responses to those questions. Does it come with warranties? What if something happens to it and it needs to be fixed? Is there insurance? Hamad said cost is mostly for labor. The parts cost around $900. And in terms of the other question was, so people can come in even outside office hours. Is that safe? Yes and no. Hamad, do you want to elaborate more on that?
Yeah, if the office is currently unlocked, people can come in outside of the office hours. And is that safe? The answer is no.
Ah, perfect. Okay. All right. And with that, we will go to Stu next.
Hi. I'm just thriving up here, just saying.
So I just wanted to say a couple things about this. First of all, I am a big advocate for this because we use it at the Military Affiliated Student Center. It's highly effective. It does give a lot of flexibility and access, and it does give access to a wider variety of people in a way that is secure. As to the question about the President's Fund, I think maybe what may help is...
I'm sorry, sorry, Stu, I don't mean to interrupt you, but is there a question to ask?
Well, that's what I was about to ask.
Oh,
I first wanted to address the bill itself, but also I wanted to request, or maybe not a question, but a request, if you guys could provide a breakdown of the President's Fund and, amounts and stuff of items, what went into the President's Fund. That way everybody has an idea of what exactly the breakdown is. And that way we can actually see it so we know kind of how that funds are being distributed. That might make things a little bit easier for people to digest.
Can I maybe respond to that? So my response to that...
I will say, before we do a response, we do need an extension of time.
Okay.
All right, see extension from Wesley. How much time? 10 minutes. All right, do I see a second? Second from Camden. Okay. All right, does anyone object to a 10-minute time extension on this bill?
I kind of do, but whatever. My leg's hurting, so that's why I'm objecting.
Okay. All right.
My answer to you, Stu, and this isn't in any way a dig at you, so please don't take it that way, but questions like this have never been brought up to presidents that don't have the identities that Naya holds, and I think it's kind of disrespectful to bring up questions like that, because this was never brought up to APRMA. No one gives a shit that APRMA, excuse my French, didn't use his funds, but Naya, being a black woman, is being questioned on funds that are down to her as a president to use. And it's $5,000, like to $15,000 each year. And like, I just think it's very disrespectful and unfair for Naya to constantly be questioned in this room about things And I'm getting kind of mad, but about things that a white man would not be questioned over, or a white woman. And I just think it's disgusting, and I will say it.
Okay, can I respond to that?
I don't believe you have the right to right now, but I think you can after.
I'm sorry. You said you weren't making a dig at me, but you just directly made a dig at me. Am I allowed to respond?
I mean,
Well, you can raise a point if you believe like it was like an improper use of the speaking podium here. But yeah, normally you wouldn't be able to respond back. I guess like what in terms of like are you raising a response for?
I'm raising a response that my question had absolutely nothing to do with anything with race or orientation or anything. My question was simply, this is my first year here. I've never questioned this before. This was something that was brought up by other people about the President's Fund. All I was asking for was information.
Yeah.
And I never would have, and my response wouldn't have changed by the race, orientation, or gender of the individual. It's the position. It was just a suggestion. And I was not insulting or questioning anybody based on any of that.
And from what I heard from the speaker, like it was something that was directed at the question and not.
It
the
wasn't
person
directed at you, Stu, and I apologize if I came across in a way that I was directing it towards the question and not to you as a human being, which is why I said what I said at the beginning. If anybody had asked that question, I would have said the same thing, and it's got nothing to do with you as a human being.
Yes.
But that's what I believe.
So that would be in line with the rules of the chamber because it wasn't directed towards a person in that sense. Yes. All right. Okay. Next would be that would be Camden on the list here.
I'm going to try to ask a question to avoid devolving into the ad hominem stuff again. But I guess my concern here is that we're using student money, $4,200 of student money, for something that could cost $120, right? Do you understand where I'm coming from? Even if you say that we rekey the locks twice every year, it would take us 17 years to recoup the cost of this keyless entry system. And so, yeah, I know you brought up safety as a concern, but what about the safety features of this keyless entry system justify 17 years worth of expenses of rekeying the locks?
I've had enough. I don't think what I will say will answer his question, so I don't know if I should speak or not. I guess, and sorry to get emotional, I'm an emotional person, and I'm not trying to sway anybody's vote by being an emotional piece of shit, but I just think it's so ridiculous that like the Senate doesn't want to keep minoritized people on our campus safe and thinks that money is more important than people's lives. Like, are you fucking kidding me? It's $4,000. And student groups haven't even used the money assigned to them. And this will keep people safe for the next like 50 years. And we're arguing. Like, why are we arguing about this? This is the stupidest shit I've ever heard. Like 20-year-olds arguing over $4,000 that's going to keep people like Naya on our campus safe, who we should want them to be on our campus safe, and our campus isn't safe for them. Like, why are we arguing over this? Like, I'm literally mad. I'm done. I'm not speaking anymore.
All right. And with that, we no longer have a speaker for this bill. And so now I'm looking for either a neg speech and or a motion to call to question on the legislation or to table the legislation. Motion to call to question from Evan. All right, I see a second from Eric. Okay, and with that, is there any objection in the chamber to moving to call this legislation into question? All right, seeing none, we will go ahead and move towards a vote. Mhm. All right, the poll will now be posting to the Senate teams now. You will have 2 minutes to vote on the issue. Vote yes if you approve, no if you do not approve, and abstain if you would like to stay out of this vote. All right, has everyone had the ability to vote on this issue that can do so? All right. Oh, still rolling in. Okay, I'll give another minute here and then we'll call an end to the vote. All right, has everyone in the chamber now had the ability to vote on this issue? Okay. Seeing no objections, I will move forward with closing this vote. And with a vote of 22 in the affirmative, 21 in the negative, and 3 abstentions, this motion clearly passes. With that, we will now move to the next item on our agenda, and that is a bill to amend the Student Senate rules and regulations, specifically in this one, Title VI, Title VII, and Title VIII of the new Constitution. Yeah, and with that, since Humberto and I are presenting this, I will be relinquishing the chair to Sadie, our senior senator, which is honestly really fun because that's the first time we've ever got to do this year, or really in any past years, I think, either. Yeah, so yeah, thank you, Sadie. I am not doing well with this mic today.
Should I just present the whole thing? Yeah, all right. All right, so, yeah, I mean,
we'll do
but like this document. So we do have a very brief like presentation, like a guiding presentation only of like what major things are being changed versus what are like just formatting and structural like wording and stuff like that. But basically, we took on this task of reviewing the our Student Senate rules and regulations, which is our governing document. This had been tried in the past and have failed, but we realized we cannot function as a Senate until we are able to get a new governing document. And this is based on every single conversation we have with every one of our advisors, with every one of the people that are in charge of like handling fees, of like following procedures and stuff like that. Every single conversation ends up in a, yep, that's why we need a new document. Yep, that's why we need to update this. Yep, I don't know why that's still in this document. I don't know why they haven't taken that out. I don't know why they haven't updated this. And so in general, we believe we need a new document that simplifies and makes it just more straightforward what we're supposed to do as a Senate, so that we can all do it just our jobs better. And with that being said, so I have here titles with minor formatting and wording changes. So as you can see, the majority, 60% of our governing document is not changing per se. We just reformatted it in our governing document so that we could take off inconsistencies, so that we could take off just incoherent stuff or information that was wrong, even clauses that are just straight up illegal and that we shouldn't have. So a lot of it was mostly like these corrections, as you can see here, Title 1, Title 5, 7, 8, 9, and 10. But we do have a couple of titles that we had more suggestions to give and more structural changes. And so that's why we're going to spend, like, of course, I'm going to show you these ones here just so that you see what the new formatting is looking like. But we're going to spend a good amount of our time just looking at these ones here that do have major changes being proposed. And they're all having the benefit of students in mind. With that being said, Ethan, is there anything you would like to say before we get into it?
No, really, that's a pretty good synopsis of like the project here. It is, a heavy document. It is about 90 pages, which does cut about 70 of what's currently in the document, but still obviously like a document that you would have to like take a night to read through. With that, Umberto and I hope that some of y'all saw the Constitution chat that we posted on Monday there. And so hopefully that gave y'all some insight into some of the broader differences here. With like presenting the entire Constitution, we could go word by word. We could stick to primarily a Q&A session here, just sort of figuring out like what folks want to do. If we do want to present the legislation word by word, we will need about a half hour of speaking time to sort of go through that. So yeah, it really just depends on like what folks in the chamber are comfortable with.
So in general, do folks feel like we should do a one huge review of the whole document, even the parts that haven't really changed, or focus on the parts that are changing, like substantially our governing structure? And yeah, so I see a couple heads.
Yeah, well, Sadie would call on them now.
I see.
I'll make sure to turn on your mic.
Okay, I see Camden, and then, okay, I see Caroline, Peyton. Anyone else? Okay, I see Wesley, and I see
Josefa.
Oh, Josefa. Okay. Sorry, I couldn't tell because I was like, I knew that he was back there. Okay. Camden.
First off, thank you for all the work that went into this. I know this is a hell of a task that you all undertook, and we're all extremely appreciative of the time that went into this. My question was more so, I know that last year, when I know that SSRR probably gives some people flashbacks from last year, it was kind of a disaster in a lot of ways, but we had like a reading period over the break where we tabled this to, I think it was the first meeting back the second semester, to essentially give senators like time to read, like you said, it's a 90-page document, right? And ensure that the vote we were having was informed. It's my personal belief that I don't think you can say that everyone in here is going to know what's in this bill after one session of discussion. I mean, that's not a knock on you guys, but it's just, the way, the size of these types of changes. So my question is, would you all support tabling this to the next meeting and create some sort of system that allows us to go through it, comb through it, fine-tooth comb, and ensure that the Senate's on board? What are your thoughts on this?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
In terms of like just review of the document, I personally wouldn't recommend it. We did get this reviewed by obviously like the committees during the past week there. And then this was posted on the Teams on the 17th for a 10-day review, which is like what is stipulated in the University Senate Code. Quite honestly, extending it to be on the spring session could also create a very big like problem in terms of like enforcement and like new implementation of the Constitution, because if we do pass it in this cycle, we are able to use the entirety of the winter break to implement that for Student Senate, implement the new outreach plans that we'll have to go through with the new document, implement the elections code, since that's going to be something that's very prevalent next semester. Even just looking at like the date of our Senate session, we'd literally be changing things relating to the elections code and the judicial branch the days before the student election starts. And a lot of that also comes from the fact that like if you look at our judicial branch right now without this Constitution, we currently don't have one. As it stands, the judicial branch takes up 1 page of SSRR currently and offers no procedures. In fact, all of the regulations for our judicial branch of government where we're supposed to do problem solving between the executive and legislative is all regulated outside of the document. The courts are currently running under regulations that are not part of our Constitution. And so these are a lot of issues, and I could go really obviously into the issues that this document has like a multitude of. But really passing this document here in a timely manner and making sure that we can implement it over the course of winter break as like the executive staff would create a lot more, like a lot better situation for us. Because if we do try to do it in the spring, I'm afraid that we won't be able to get the implementation done, because quite honestly, it's going to be confusing for a lot of folks that are coming back into the Senate space. And so being able to alleviate that confusion and also make sure that this Constitution gets enforced fairly as it gets implemented, I think is like really the prime reason that we would like to see it passed in cycle 7. Umberto, do you have anything to add?
No, I think that summarizes pretty well. I do think I want to like emphasize, and I'll emphasize it as many times as necessary, that whatever we pass tonight, and we specifically want to pass it tonight so that we have whatever specific concerns are brought tonight, the winter break, to make whatever final adaptations we need to make so that when the semester starts, we can implement it right away. And this also gives all the senators, as you mentioned, the whole winter break to just read over the document, understand what your new duties are going to be, understand what your new role, which again is not changing a lot, it's just a couple minor adjustments, but that would be the reason why.
Thank you both. That was a wonderful answer.
With that response, I'm looking for a motion to I like extend time or do something. But okay, I see a motion from Stu. Like, what's the motion?
To extend time.
By how many minutes?
Let's say 5 minutes.
Okay, sounds good. I'm looking for a second. Okay, I see a second from Prasad. Is there any like problems with that?
I'm going to object and ask Stu to withdraw his motion. I think we need more time.
Then can we go for 10 then? Is it okay for me to modify?
Yeah, if you want to.
I'll withdraw, make a new motion, make it 10 minutes. Is that cool?
Yes.
So a second? Okay. Is there any objection to extending for 10 minutes? Okay, seeing no objection, we'll continue on with the line of questions. Ethan, did you have more that you wanted to say in response?
Yeah, I also wanted to add, in terms of amendability, this new Constitution is a lot more accessible to amendments than our old one, just because of the fact that it's structured a lot better. And the old one, you'd have to amend in like certain, like for example, Article 5 concerning legislative committees, as it's titled, represents like literally the entire impeachment process for Student Senate. So like, how would anyone reading that document know that that is supposed to be where that is? And so really looking at this document, it would also be a lot more easy to go with changes after the fact than the current one would.
Yeah. Sounds good. I'll be moving on to Caroline.
Does it have to be a question? I thought we were just responding to whether we should review the changes or not.
Yeah, you can.
Okay, I just wanted to express my support for reviewing the changes in Title 2, 3, 4, and 6. I think that would be very beneficial to this chamber.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's it. Thanks.
Perfect. And then next is Peyton.
I no longer have anything to add. Don't worry about it.
Okay, perfect. And Peyton, for those online, said they wanted to withdraw. And so next will be Wesley.
I would also like to second that opinion that we should just focus over the stuff we should focus on the stuff that is actually getting changed, because if we flash back to the last time we tried to do this, there were like whole reading sessions that nobody came to because nobody wants to hear an audiobook on the Constitution. And they tried so hard to get people to like read or listen, it just didn't happen. And this document has been out there for a while. The rewrite committee was completely open and everything was recorded. There was like a whole like monologue video answering questions and going over the entire thing. Like the executive staff has tried so hard to like get people to read it. At this point, we should just focus on the big changes, ask questions on those. Don't really need to know too much about how things are formatted in Google Docs or Microsoft Word.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
And with that, do you just want us to go ahead and present those big changes, I guess, like before we go into any other questions?
I'll move on to Josepha as they're the last on this
perfect.
list from the original questions.
Oh, just that's good.
Okay, perfect.
All right.
Then
yeah.
with that,
Sounds good.
I'll have Humberto start with Title II here, the legislative branch.
All right. So, and actually, just before we go to the legislative branch, I just want to show you like.
You might want to share this on Teams as well,
Oh,
so that
good
folks are
idea.
able to see it.
There we go. All right. So just like I just want to show you a little bit of how the new format is looking like. So again, most of this information is exactly the same. It's just reorganized in a more structured way, in a more digestible and understanding way. If you dare open the current SSRR, it really is a nightmare. It is like so many different formats, so many different like numbering, so many different even like eras of using. So like some of this was written in the 70s, so like parts of the commas and when to put like quotations. It's just all over the place. So this is like showing you exactly how it's going to look like. Mostly, you know, we have a very clear list of the senators that are here. And again, we're not changing anything in this part here. It's just we're making it as clear and straightforward as possible so that whenever someone has a question about their own position, about what their role in the Senate is supposed to be, they can very easily just go to a section and find this information, which is something impossible in our current SSRR. You really need to use the search engine and just spend some good amount of time trying to find the information you're trying to find. And so this really corrects that. And again, we're not doing any major changes in the division of senators, seats. We are making just over here very clear like what the responsibilities of a senator are, which are not clear at all in our current governing document. Yeah, sorry. With that being said, this is like I'm going to start going to the Title II. Mostly, as a heads up, one of the biggest changes we are trying to do here is a name change. And this would imply transitioning from being like the Student Senate standing committees to becoming student councils. So it would be the Finance Council, the Social Justice Council, Rights and Affairs Council. And the full Senate, what we are right now, would not be called full Senate anymore, which actually we don't know where the term full Senate came from because it's not anywhere in our current governing document. And there's actually no explanation at all how we are supposed to run these meetings, what to expect from these meetings. And so instead of calling them full Senate, we're calling them the Students' Assembly. So every time we all meet here as senators together, it's a Students' Assembly. And that also makes it clear for students outside that like, oh, as a student, I'm able to be present in this assembly. Whereas if you hear the term full Senate, like you might think it's a club, you might think it's like something like mock trial, but you hear the word Students' Assembly, it's like, okay, that seems like a place where they're going to be representing student interests. So that's I would say that's the biggest change here. But out of that, in terms of like the division, we have, you know, academic centers, so all of those that are by school, or if you're an international undergraduate, and we have community senators, which are like appointed by organizations. Let's see. Yeah, all of this here isn't really changing, so I'm not going to spend too much time. Just I want you to look at the format, how nice and organized it looks compared to how it used to be. But we are adding a couple of responsibilities that are actually already, one of them was already a responsibility, but it just wasn't very clear. The first one would be, you know, attending to student councils. So a lot of senators come to full Senate, but they're not coming to committees. So we are hoping that with making it clearer, we have senators that are showing up to like the Students' Assembly and the student councils too. And we did add this responsibility here. And all of these things, it's not like they're not going to require too much extra time from what you already put. Basically, this last stipulation here, what we're saying is find a student fee that you're interested in. We want senators, we're basically giving more power to the senators being involved in the process of allocating fees and researching fees. And so that you can be like, I'm very passionate about this fee, the transportation fee, the health fee, whatever it is, and you can do some research on it and then help the people in charge of like dealing with the fees itself, giving recommendations, working with them throughout all year long, so that we do not run into the problem where we are running right now, where it's just a handful of people that know these fees and that like make recommendations about them. So this would involve the senators all year long in this process, which again, it's the most important thing we do. $25 million that are only being handled by a small executive staff or by a couple of like people that get selected to boards. By adding this, we're making sure that all senators are part of this process and that they're just helping out with it. And again, it's not that you have to do a research paper or anything. It's just doing a couple of points or ideas like on a specific fee that you feel it. Is there anything you would like to
Really,
add?
it could also be something as minimal as noting student service use and something like that. So for example, the transportation fee, just taking the bus, you're able to learn so much about how that fee gets implemented across campus. We learned that, sometimes we do lose money in that fee. For example, like when buses are running empty, that's something that's not good for the student senate because we are contributing to that transportation fee. And that's something that would be noteworthy when we look at the presentation of that fee as well as student utilization.
Mm-hmm. So that's the only major change in terms of like the senator's responsibility. Again, this one already was a responsibility, it just wasn't really clear. This one here, we're adding it in a way, and this takes away the necessity to be like being elected to hundreds of advisory boards. So it even makes life for a senator easier, even if you're like more involved. Very clear disciplinary procedures and removal. We're not changing this. We're just trying to make it as clear as possible so a senator knows what a process is whenever they're misbehaving, and if for a reason they don't think they should be admonished or something, we have the process to appeal this and everything, as well as the replacement procedures for senators. Types of legislation, very synthesized the 3 types of legislations that we have here. Again, this is not changing. But we are adding this part here, which makes it so much easier for folks to know what the process is to write a bill and introduce it. So this involves from, the legislative process, from when you submit the bill to when it's going to be reviewed in committees. It has all the instructions to how step by step this has to be done, so that every senator, if they feel like they want to write a bill, they don't feel like they don't know how to, or that they don't know who to reach out to. Because like these steps are as clear as they could be, and it just makes it like we're even putting guidelines so that you don't show up here and present something that is not even eligible or that is going to be like shut down by the Senate immediately. We're trying to make sure like everyone knows what the guidelines are, what makes a bill eligible or not, and stuff like that. We are adding the Students' Assembly. There literally was not any section in our Constitution, like in our governing document, that explained what happens in this room. No idea. It just was like a kind of like common knowledge, but we thought it was extremely important to codify it so that everyone here knows what is supposed to be happening, what Ethan, what myself, what Sadie, Max, like all the leadership folks are supposed to be doing.
I would also say a new thing in the chamber, because as we passed it through here in general speaking and voting rights, we have now also added a stipulation here that basically people who want to speak who are like non-senators, they have the ability to reach out to our internal affairs director now ahead of meetings if they would like to be a student coming to the Students' Assembly here to like raise issues about like something they're experiencing on campus. And then of course we'll still have to maintain this sort of like senator speaking right, like sort of like conference there, but this also just adds another area. If students aren't too familiar with the Student Senate and like its role here, they can now come to these meetings and be able to speak if something is, particularly important to them.
Really quickly, I need a motion to extend speaker time. at OC Camden, and then
Motion to extend speaker time by 24 hours.
if someone seconds that, we're beefing. Is there any contention to extending speaker time by 24 hours?
We don't have to use it all.
Yeah, like we'll definitely like we'll try to keep it under like half an hour to an hour. So yeah.
A reminder for anyone at any time, it takes a 2/3 vote from a motion to end debate on something. So
and that's fully up to you all. But yeah, so did that get approved?
All right.
Is there any objection?
Are there any objections? Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah,
All right. Yeah, I
You're
promise that
good.
we won't even need a full extra hour. So yeah, we're explaining the different agendas, responsibilities of us here as a body, responsibilities of the leadership, and we also finally go into the student councils. And all of them have literally our current SSRR. Some parts used one format to describe some committees, some used a different format to describe other committees, and use a completely different format. And so this is homogenizing it. Every student council has an explanation like this, and so do all the other committees, so do other like subcommittees, whatever it is. They all have this format where we go through like speaking and voting rights, general responsibilities, then legislative responsibilities, responsibilities of the leadership, and then individual responsibilities of the chair, the vice chair, the secretary. And we are suggesting remuneration for the leadership of committees. So this would be a stipend of $250. And we are hoping, we actually feel like it's completely wrong to be asking a lot of the leadership in these committees to be putting multiple hours of their days to helping guide this, but not get any sort of remuneration. We don't support unpaid labor here. So that's the reason why we are adding this stipulation. The specific charges of the councils per se, for the majority of them did not change. We are, again, like for example, for the finance council, we are just making it like very clear, what does the finance council do? The subcommittees, in this case, the fee review subcommittee, how does the fee review work? Who's in it? Everything you need to know is very clear. Function, recommendations, anything, you know. And finally, we have here the Social Justice Council. Instead of being the DEI Council, diversity, equity, inclusion, like these words, they can be very superficial. They can be very performative too. And so by renaming it the Social Justice Council, we're hoping it's just more clear what the purpose of this committee is to be. We are bringing, like the DEI currently has the what's it called? The DEI Fund Board. But that was in an appendix. It was not even under the responsibilities of the committee. So here we're bringing it right where it's supposed to be, so that you don't have to be going to like, oh, I have to go to this appendix to know what the heck is going on. It's right here where it's supposed to be in the charges of the committee. And again, no major changes here. All of this is word by word the same, with clarifications, of course, and with some updates.
Not word by word.
Yeah, not word by word.
One thing that was changed specifically for the DEI fund as well is the religious funds sort of like purpose through it. Originally, we did have stipulations on here that the DEI fund could not fund certain things for religious organizations, such as, you know, religious materials and or funding missionary trips, stuff like that. That requirement has now been taken off, as it does represent a liability under Kansas state law as well that could have gotten Student Senate in a lot of trouble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is like a true story. It could have gotten us in a lot of trouble. So this is why it's so important to have this new document approved, because our current governing document is putting us at a really terrible position where it looks like, you know, our governing document itself is violating the law. So that shouldn't be a thing. So yeah, good point. And just FYI, Kansas has really protective laws for religious groups, and like that's why this had to take place. But let's see, we keep on going down.
Yeah.
We have, so the Educational Opportunity Fund, which is actually one of the programs where the presidential money goes to. This used to be directly like under the supervision and control and chairing of the president, but now it is also going to be put under the Social Justice Council, since this after all is giving scholarships and like funding programs that are very related to, you know, making opportunities as equitable and as accessible and inclusive for folks on campus. So it is under the DEI committee now, and the director of social justice will be basically chairing the EOF. Would you like to add anything to that point?
No,
Oh,
yeah, really,
sounds
the
good.
EOF has fundamentally just been, re-uploaded.
And per se, like the regulations, again, like they're pretty straightforward. And here we reach to probably the biggest change in the legislative branch. You know, it has been the part that we have spent a lot of time having conversations about this. And it basically refers to the merging of two of our existing committees into one council. And this has several reasons behind it. The easiest one to just throw out there, which is not the main reason, but attendance is a big reason why we're trying to bring the power of like two councils that could be doing so much and have a very important role in this university, but that haven't been having the attendance. Not even only this year, but even in past years, these two committees have had less participation than any of the other two committees. So we thought like by this we are allowing senators to, you know, grow in size, be able to have more participation and saying in a lot of the things that the council does. But so as I said, attendance, okay, maybe attendance is low this year, maybe it won't be next year. Attendance is just, it is a factor, but it's not the main one. The main factor here is that we realized that a lot of the charges of university affairs and the Student Rights Council overlapped. And a lot of them, the tools that Rights needed to enforce some things were available for UA, and vice versa. UA could like use a lot of the tools that Rights has, but you know, it's like they're trying to achieve very similar stuff, but in completely like separate, unknowing, like unconnected ways. And we are bringing them together so that both of them can achieve their mission, but also have like the power to do so with the tools that the two committees bring together. And just a brief example of this, SSR, the Student Rights Committee currently reviews all the amendments to our governing document of the Student Senate. The funny thing is that University Affairs has the ability to propose amendments and review and like oversee the governing document of Staff Senate, of Faculty Senate, of University Senate. So in our head, we're like, how come Rights, like the Student Rights Committee, is only focusing on like our internal governing documents and our rights and responsibilities, while you have University Affairs here who has like these tools to suggest amendments to office policy, to suggest amendments to KU policy, to housing policy, like all these things that are related to student life and student rights are going to be able to actually happen if we bring these two committees together. I would say, just like I want to show you here real quick, UA, these are related stuff that they usually deal with: housing and food insecurity, public safety, sexual violence. And they discuss matters regarding policies like the Provost's Office, Public Safety Office, student housing, memorial unions, SILK. So these are a lot of tools that UA has to influence and impact student life on campus. And so why shouldn't those tools be available in a single committee where the main purpose is to advocate for student rights? You advocate for student rights, not only in our own governing document, but also in the governing documents of all the other faculty, staff, University Senate, and the policy manual, and like all these other things that you are now going to be able to use to advocate for the rights of students. And so that was the reasoning behind this idea. And, you know, this was something that was discussed at first with the leadership of this committee. But we did realize and because it was brought to our attention by members of the committee, that they felt that we needed to have a broader conversation with the members of the committee. And so just having conversations with members of UA, we can tell like very certainly that the members for the most part are like good with it merging. Many even like saw it as a very logical thing to do. But of course, like there's still a similar thought to what Camden brought up, you know, like should we maybe discuss this like at the beginning of the semester or not? But in general, I want y'all to know like this committee merging together would give more power to this body to succeed in advocating for student rights, student life. And if there were to be major contention, if I had heard from UA members, this is not the right thing to do, this is not the right path, we should stay independent, we would have listened. That would have been the case, but I just want to share with you that most of the members were truly on board with this decision, as well as the leadership. Wesley.
We should talk about how, at least mention, all this also passed through.
Oh, here, wait a sec and repeat it in the mic for people online since we have a high attendance there today. You can grab the mic.
All right. Sorry, it's different at the Dole Institute. They're like, don't touch the mic. So, but it should be pointed out that all this also passed through all the committees. While technically certain committees only reviewed certain parts of it and rights reviewed the whole thing, they all got the same document, which is just the whole thing. And then they debated the whole thing and then basically voted on the whole thing. So there's not really an issue in the committee since they voted to pass it.
Yeah, I had a question about section 2, the bit talking about ASHC. It's bullet point 4,
Yes.
right there where it's talking about housing rights?
Yeah.
Okay, so is this is new? Is this an amendment? Is this what you were talking about, Wesley? When has that always been there?
Yeah.
This is the new thing.
Yeah, that's part of the new.
I was under the impression that there would be some kind of precedent that like you discussed and where ASHC could in some form or shape separate from student housing. Is that coming, or does that specify that?
Either or.
Yeah, whatever.
There will be easier. Okay. So essentially, that's up to the ASHC. So this just sort of makes a room for ASHC in Senate, sort of includes the ASHC in more of our processes, creates more of that relationship, especially with the Rights and Affairs Council. Like, for example, with like the soft veto power that like requires there be a lot of communication. Then there's also going to be the new second scholarship hall senator for these scholarship halls at large. Now sort of like increase scholarship hall representation as well and sort of bring it closer. Any more integration would be up to the ASHC to come forward and be like, hey, we would like to be more closely integrated, talk more about like the activity fees for the scholarship halls, et cetera, that housing currently manages. That's all other conversations that can happen in the future if you'd like it to, but this is sort of like the first baby step.
Okay, yeah, I'll bring that up on our own meeting agenda when we meet in our little hole.
Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and I'll also just address too, like we've been chatting with like the presidents of ASHC and AURH in terms of like what they want their relationship with the Student Senate to look like. And so that's going to be something that we see develop, throughout the year now that we want to, sort of connect with a closer relationship like that.
Camden?
Let's go to the election code. I was curious what the rationale behind giving the Elections Commission original jurisdiction over elections code disputes was. Could you elaborate on?
That's in the current document as well, that the student trial court will have original jurisdiction over those, especially in terms of that. That's just so that when the elections code and the referendum portion of the document are being brought into question, that the elections commission, as the people administering elections, will be the first people to sort of like look at that and make sure that they are enforcing the elections code correctly, and then allows it to be appealed, up to the Court of Appeals in this case, but in the new one, it's Constitutional Court, and then they would be the one to decide the constitutionality of the case. So it really is giving the Elections Commission room to, state their interpretation of the Elections Code if a case does get brought up about it, and then allowing that to be further adjudicated during the course of the election.
So is that how the system currently works?
Yes. Actually, in the current system, our courts, are fairly unorganized. The trial court, by the way, regulated itself to only really deal with the election stuff, but under the Constitution, they're supposed to deal with everything and be the first court of appeal, like for anything in Student Senate, and then it goes to the Court of Appeals. That's not been something that we've seen in practice because it obviously just wasn't implemented correctly, especially since it was just a one-page piece from the constitutional rewrite project of years past here. So yeah, currently this would actually, reshape it, and, it would hold the same role that it holds now, but it would also make it a lot cleaner. So now that court doesn't have to deal with all of the other cases that, aren't pertinent to the Elections Commission in this new document here.
Okay, so sorry, I'm personally clearing this up. So let's say hypothetically last year we have this imaginary coalition called KUnity and this other imaginary coalition called ACT UP KU, and one of them sues the other. Should that have gone directly to the Elections Commission and instead the trial court claimed jurisdiction?
Well, no, because the Elections Commission didn't exist during that time. It was only the Student Trial Court. The Student Trial Court took the place of the Elections Commission when last year's rewrite took effect.
Got it. Okay,
Yes.
That makes sense. Thank you so much.
And we will go into the elections code. So if more questions do come up, that's totally awesome. So we'll get there. But before we finish that was, oh, sorry. Yeah, Joanna.
I just had a question about the merge between UA and Rights. If they were to merge, would that mean that it would only take one committee to pass a bill in order for it to be presented at the full Senate, or would it take still two committees? Because if it were, wouldn't that already count for 2/3 of Senate?
I guess what is the question?
So my question is how will when bills were to be presented in the different committees, would it take just one committee to pass a bill in order for it to be presented in full Senate? But in the case that it still had to be two committees, since it's only going to be three, wouldn't it already count for 2/3, which is what is necessary for a bill to fully pass? My point is would it be even necessary for it to be presented in full Senate since 2/3 already approved it?
Well, no, it would be necessary because in committees, you have representatives who usually aren't tied to the Students' Assembly here. This is the secondary part of the legislative process. As of right now, we sort of have a system where, by at least two of the committees passing the legislation, that will then get sent up to StudEx first to approve the full Senate agenda, then eventually full Senate. So that aspect's not going to change. It's still going to take 2 out of 3. And, in all honesty, as you brought up, that's 2/3 of the Senate. So it really does showcase a broader support for a bill than before it even gets up to the full Senate here. But yeah, I think realistically we should consider them separate processes because even just tracking attendance from this year, we don't have a lot of senators who do attend those committee meetings. And so it's really a completely different body of review that ends up happening to see the document at that part.
Thank you.
Any final questions before? That was actually it for Title II. Are there any other questions about this specific merger, which was the biggest change in the legislative branch?
Humberto, online.
Oh, yeah, my bad. Let's see. Yeah, whoever has their hand raised.
See it right here.
Oh, can you? Oh, Jesse. Awesome.
Hey, everyone. Yeah, that's probably me. So thank you for all the work that you've done and everything that has gone into this. It definitely looks like a much better, much more organized document. I think I have a question probably to things prior to Title II, because it seems that responsibilities and requirements for graduate students had some changes in there, and I just wanted to hear from you what those changes were. The first thing that I saw was that now graduate students are required to attend every single council meeting and every, I don't remember the other, student assembly, the full Senate, when before I think there was a percentage of minimum attendances that we would have, precisely considering, and I know we have excused absences written in there, but many graduate students are also parents and also have several responsibilities that, for which my understanding is, for which that consideration had been made before. And not only does it seem that there are more requirements and attendance issues with that, but there's also a bit more responsibility with fee review and with the assignment of 3 student orgs to work with, because in no place does it say that the student orgs will be assigned to senators based on either their constituency or anything similar. It just seems like it's a lot more being required of graduate students, and I just want to hear about that, please.
Yeah, thank you so much for your concerns, Jesse. They're very valid, and I'm gonna do my best to give you an idea of why we decided to go forward like this. This year, we've realized the big problem that it is when you count a graduate student towards quorum, but don't require them to come to more than 3 meetings a semester, because then that leaves us every single meeting with almost 10 people short, because a lot of times it might just be 1 graduate student or 2 showing up. And so it's 10 to like even more, because there's a law students, a pharmacy. So it's about 15 senators that every meeting we are struggling to count towards quorum. But we also don't want to take like their count towards quorum. So we don't want to be like, oh, yeah, graduate students can come only 3 times a semester, which means they can like count for quorum those 3 times a semester, because that is just anti-democratic and it's taking away the voice of graduate students. And so we thought, if we just make it a requirement for everyone to come, since everyone is counted towards quorum, but we make it more clear, like, for example, when you can have an excused absence. And we are pretty flexible, especially with graduate students. So for all the reasons that you brought up, like, which are very true, you know, like graduate students have a lot more workload, they might have families. So in the case that did present itself, then the graduate student has the complete ability to ask for an excused absence, and then they won't be like affecting quorum as much anymore. And this was like, there were a lot of conversations on whether we should you know, change requirements for graduate students, but it just seemed like it was overcomplicating things into like when certain senators can have exceptions, when not. So this is like kind of homogenizing expectations about attendance, but it doesn't mean that we won't be like very flexible with graduate students. But we're hoping that by taking away the option of graduate students who only show up 3 times a semester, that maybe this will get more senators to come in the meetings. And if they can't, because we understand that, then they can ask for an absence. And Naya has a point.
I just wanted to, because I know previously, I don't know if this is something that you changed, but I know previously there was something in the SSRR that Student Senate would be able to allocate funding for childcare if senators were needing it. Is that still something that's in there?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to say, like, I know that doesn't solve like everything that you spoke to, Jesse. But I just wanted to say too, like, specifically to like any childcare, anything like that any senators or like exec or whatever are operating with Senate are needing, like we are able to allocate for that as well. So I just wanted to like pump that little point in there.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nai. That was very valuable information. And besides, I do want to like just clarify that if you believe, Jesse or other graduate students here or Holly, that this is really not the way to go, we, of course, like in any process, accept amendments. If you were to have a better proposition on how we can, just not be so affected by quorum every session by grad students, that would be greatly appreciated and welcomed. Does that answer your question, Jesse?
Somewhat, and I appreciate all the feedback from you, Merton, and from Naya. Okay, just my question now, I guess, since we need to phrase this as a question, would be: is it possible to either include something, or at least have something in writing where we can say graduate students' representation, responsibilities, whatever, will be looked into, and maybe set a date or a deadline for when graduate senators can get together and work on that? I think that would be ideal, because my concern is we already have problems getting graduate senator seats filled. We already have problems attending. And although there is some support, there are many, many factors that play into it. And particularly when meetings go over 2 hours, that's a huge time commitment for us as well. And that happens often. So is that a possibility?
It could be, but there's other stipulations as well, and in fact, in the old document that really sort of hinder that, because in the old document, for example, we have to wait the entire semester to determine whether or not graduate students aren't meeting their attendance standards, and that can be very difficult, especially when it comes to sort of counting the meetings, have they attended 3 meetings or 2. If we see for example, a graduate senator who's not attending any meetings, we can't remove them from office until the end of the semester, because that's the way that it's stipulated in the current version of SSRR. And I think that this new one also provides opportunities for grads to miss certain things unexcused and get excused absences for others, at the same level that undergrads would, because it still does stipulate sort of that 3 meeting sort of barrier for attendance. And what comes from that as well is that would generally line up with what graduates are already sort of required to do attendance wise for student senate meetings, being that sort of 3 meeting mark for student senate and then 2 for committees. So does that provide more clarification, or did that add another layer of confusion? I'm sorry.
I appreciate it. I'm sorry that I'm taking up so much time. But that somewhat clarifies, but my concern is not just the attendance piece of it. It's everything that needs to be factored in to all the responsibilities that come, because it seems that it's not just a change in the attendance. And that part concerns me. I'm speaking for myself, and I'm speaking for what I've heard from others in the past. I'm not sure if that's the feeling of the graduate senators in the chamber now. I am all for more responsibility and more accountability for our responsibilities as senators. I'm just concerned when the change, to me, seems drastic. But I appreciate the time.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jesse. And I do want to say, there definitely is 100% the possibility for, let's say, GSAB or graduate students, graduate senators, to draft a proposal. And after all, like Ethan said, this constitution is easier to amend than in the past. So if a new suggestion for the way graduate senators interact in the Senate were to be brought, it can be considered whenever we have session again. So that shouldn't be too hard of a process, if that helps.
It does. Thank you very much.
I think Giovanna has a question.
Just speaking to what Jesse said, GSAB did meet today, and as Naya reported on my behalf, we're happy to we're happy with the Constitution and happy to endorse it. They only had that one issue that Jesse's bringing up, so it is something that GSAB and grad senators would like to look at over the break. And I don't think there's anything wrong with us, hopefully, passing this new constitution today and then creating an amendment next semester or over break if we really feel as graduate students that this is too much for us and that maybe we can figure out another way. But I don't think it should hinder us from moving forward with the document, considering the work that's been put into it and the effort that has been put into it to create such a much better, well, a way better document than we had before. So I just wanted to put that forward.
Naya?
Also, too, I wanted to just say, and like, this is not to discredit anybody, like, not to discredit Jesse or Holly or GSAB. And this goes for like undergrad students as well, because obviously, especially for like, there's non-traditional undergrads who, you know, are older, have kids, different stuff like that. And so I think when we're just talking about like accountability and standards, like, I think it's important to look at it, I guess like on a more like, equity, you know, equitable based way, which I think is really important. And I think that there are things that like need to be taken into account for grads, just obviously because like they're students on top of like having that job. And obviously there's like family and kids and, you know, other outlying factors. But I also just wanted to say, like, to Ethan and Humberto's credit and the other individuals who worked on this document the entire semester, like, these meetings were open. It was highly encouraged on multiple bases over months for people to show up, be involved, take part in editing this document and giving their points and giving suggestions. And so I think it's something where, like, we also need to be, and I mean, and I'm speaking to everyone across the board, like, I think it's important to be in this room and give your points and give your opinions, and that's important. But I also think that, like, being respectful to the individuals who did show up to those meetings, who did plan them, who did give people opportunities to come and voice their opinions and set up the meetings, like, these opportunities have been here all semester. And so I think it's important to also understand, like, caring about something is important, but it's also like being purposeful and like when you're bringing these things up, because it's like now the document has been passed through the 4 committees. It's been present in Teams and has been accessible in Teams all semester since literally like the first month of us getting into this administration. And so the opportunities have been there to be present and to voice all of these things and give these opinions, which I think are really important. And so I think it's just like understanding like the standards of, I guess, like accountability for like others, but like also ourselves as well, like in Senate. And I mean, again, this goes for everybody, grads, undergrads, executive staff, advisors, literally everyone across the board. So I just wanted to kind of make that point for the entire, assembly, I guess. So thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you so much. I believe that is all we have for the second title. Again, like, Giovanna, yeah.
I have a small recommendation and a quick question about the student fee research and advocacy. So my recommendation was, so at the very end, it says that the senator has to reach out to the board that they are assigned to. I was wondering if that could be the other way.
Okay.
Because like I feel like people might, I don't know, feel intimidated, especially first-time senators, and just receiving an email from the board saying that like their presence there would be nice or stuff like that will actually provide a lot of encouragement for them.
Yeah, no, actually that could definitely be friendly then. That's a good suggestion. So let's see, reach out to the board. Oh, so like you mean the campus fee advisory board shall reach out to the student senator?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I can do that change real quick here since it's just a friendly.
You can't because you're not signed in.
Oh, I'm not signed in. Okay, but that will definitely be friendly. And thank you so much for that suggestion.
Yeah, and I have a question about the student fee as well. So it says that the senators should put their 3 preferences. What would happen in the unlikely but possible situation where no senator is interested in a certain campus fee? Would that space just be left empty, or would a senator still be appointed to it regardless of whether they're interested in it or not?
So yeah, ideally, we wouldn't point senators to things that they aren't interested in. This would sort of be like a holistic method done by like the policy director now. As of right now, for student fee stuff, it isn't really clear like how that outreach is supposed to happen. Even for some of like the chairs of like a lot of the advisory boards right now, they're unsure about like how to outreach to students and like get other members there. What this would sort of like entail is basically when those preferences are sent to the policy director is then going to do their best to sort of match all of those. And sometimes that might even involve just like literally reaching out to people, talking to them and seeing like what they might be able to swing. And if not, I mean, it's like a holistic process. It's not something that, you know, necessarily has to be done, but it's like something that you can like make considerations, you know, maybe shift responsibilities to other areas for senators if they're maybe not able to contribute as much to something there. It really just create like, as of right now, we don't really have like any sort of system by which senators can sort of like go between fees on that. This creates like and implements a system where senators can do that outreach and can be there, and sort of just makes it easier for people coming in at the beginning of the semester that they're able to just send these preferences and then be able to get involved in Senate almost immediately in fall with like sort of like an idea of what they are responsible for.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for those great questions and suggestions.
Really quickly, Naya, did you still have something that you wanted to say?
I just kind of wanted to do a follow-up to Giovanna's thing. Or I guess like not a, I guess, I just was gonna say like, I guess like, I think that the idea for like the boards to reach out to the senators is good. I guess like for the process of that, then would it be something that I guess like falls into like the internal affairs director's position to like do kind of like a Google form or survey for like each senator to fill out to pick their like three wants for whatever fee that they're looking at, and then give those results to the committee and board or the board person.
So it's actually the policy director. So the policy director is going to be the one overseeing this because since they are usually there for platforms and since the policy director is already supposed to sort of take up the extra work for stuff that isn't happening on that level for platforms and policy, that's where that's all going to be centered.
Yeah, but I guess like that kind of like rough job process, like is that kind of how like you, I guess like we're seeing like that's how that would be carried out.
Yeah, it's basically going to be a Microsoft form that's advertised on the Teams and go from there.
Cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you all very much. So that is it with Title II. Title II is probably the most lengthy one. That's why we spend so much time, but the other titles should be quicker.
All right. So going into the executive branch here. A lot of stuff about the executive branch just really hasn't changed. It's sort of like, you know, as we've done with other areas of the document, just been organized a lot better so that people can understand their job descriptions better and so that folks can sort of like hold exec members accountable in like a better way. So yeah, let me get to that there. First one is StudX. StudX really hasn't changed at all except for a couple of name changes we have for positions that you'll see in the second here. This attendance policy for StudX has been optimized. Originally, there was this sort of like weird stipulation that StudX could sort of like hold off on expelling someone from the committee if there was a case in, you know, which they wanted to like do like a situation of like, you know, making sure, oh yeah, this person missed it for like valid reasons versus, you know, not doing so. This sort of just streamlines it and basically allows StudX to defer action immediately rather than having to suspend the member first and then go about renewing their membership on StudX because that just seems really messy. The function has stayed the same, especially in terms of our break procedures, the procedures for when we're acting as a standing committee or in this case a student council, and then the hierarchy of chairing such a meeting. Then next, for the exec staff, they have been renamed and retitled like the President's Cabinet. We just think this makes more sense in terms of a title for the some changes that you'll see throughout the document here. Our communications director position has been changed to public relations director. Our policy and development director has just been changed to policy director. And then our DEI director has been changed into social justice director. And oh gosh, this one is another area where that's not changed, but the grad student body vice president will now be the graduate student body president to sort of reflect what that role holds for the graduate student community there. We also have remuneration that we've placed up here under job duties as well. Originally, remuneration was in a completely different part of the document, but it makes so much more sense to bring it into the executive branch, quite honestly. We also brought the impeachment and removal procedures for the executive branch as well into this area here, sort of just to, modify the role of the president's cabinet and the role that Senate has in holding them accountable. Then over here, you'll see sort of just a restructure of how like these job roles are. There's not really a lot that's been changed except for, just streamlining it. In terms of the rest of it, pretty much the exact same job descriptions. I don't really have to go over them. Even the ones that got title changes have pretty much the exact same job role. CCO directors. All right, and this is the newest change here. So sort of responding to the fact that Senate has like this sort of overgrowth of like over 25 advisory boards that we have in our student government that are going unfilled, that are not feeling heard or serviced really at the current rate. We still don't really have all of them filled. Some of them don't have chairs. And so to sort of like fix that and fix the issue of sort of like having an overextension of student democracy when the engagement isn't there, we've sort of put together a campus fee advisory board that's going to help regulate that process more into the future. And this will be something that's also brought together by the policy director here in sort of combination with their duties of assigning senators to these areas. And as you can see, certain people will be responsible for certain fees on this advisory board and sort of directing the research and presentation of those fees during the campus fee review. The Student Senate Treasurer, for example, is responsible for the student org fee and EOF fee. This is what we use to manage Student Senate, the student org fees, and also what we do to manage like the unallocated funding that we distribute during like Wednesday nights like this. So that makes sense to put out there. We have the president of the University of Kansas Memorial Corporation Board on the student union fee and student union activities fee. Of course, that's sort of like at their discretion to send a proxy and or like puts other people in charge from that area. But that's also just holding true to the same tradition of like having the Memorial Board sort of appoint SUA and other folks to that committee there. And then some other changes you'll see here is the president, instead of having to appoint a lot of advisory boards, will now be appointing advocates to certain fees. So for example, the student health fee, which encompasses the Watkins and CAPS fee, will now be appointed to a student health advocate. Same for student child care for the Hilltop Child Development fee, and so on it goes. And then these advocates specifically, since they aren't someone, who's in another position and is ex officio a member of that committee, will now have their job descriptions put through right here so that folks can see like what needs to be done for certain fees like that. And yeah, that's pretty much the executive branch in a quick nutshell. Not a lot of changes except for that final change of, restructuring the advisory boards to make the student government more friendly and accessible to students who want to do the advocacy but don't necessarily want to go through a morass of bureaucracy to do so. But yeah, any questions on the executive branch? All right, seeing none, should I move on to the judicial? Perfect. All right, so the newest thing about the judicial branch is now that we have one, really the judicial authority and appointment thing is pretty much the same thing that all judicial powers held by the constitutional. By the way, you sort of do a roadmap here. The Student Elections Commission is now realistically what we have is like a lower court here, and then it goes to the Constitutional Court for other issues. Those are the only two student senate courts we have in this new one. And so they get their judicial authority from the Supreme Court, basically, of the student government here. When there's a vacancy, this used to be like an 11 senator random draw process that the chief of staff had to orchestrate, and then it had to be confirmed by 4/5 of the student senate. We thought that was like really burdening the legislative branch, especially also on the chief of staff side, to like really have to like mix in so many people just to appoint judges to these courts. So what this one does is it does like a presidential appointment of judges on these courts, and then basically makes that get approved by 4/5 of the legislature. The same exact process, but now doesn't involve 11 senators getting a random email from the chief of staff being like, you have been nominated. Then term link, I went ahead and established a term link. Court judges used to have lifetime terms. Now I'm putting that down to 2-year terms here, and then a 2-term limit can be enforced under this constitution. This is really just to provide some liquidity to the courts there, that if folks like want to do the service, but like are also like a little, iffy about like the lifetime appointment thing, they know that they have like a concrete end to their term, and then they know like what they're going to be doing in those areas. Then we have also added remuneration to the courts as well. All members of the KU Student Senate Court shall be allocated a stipend of $250 at the end of the election schedule, basically just to also give them payment for the work that they do throughout the year. The student elections people who manage student elections often don't get the pay that they deserve. You know, as like Camden alluded to earlier, we had a ton of trials that happened under the trial court this past semester here, but you know, they weren't paid for that. These were volunteer hours of service and then volunteer hours of writing opinions that shouldn't be put onto students without any sort of like pay incentive there, because it really is just free labor that's not being used for like the benefit of those people, but for the benefit of Student Senate. Then moving on from that here, we have organization of the courts. We have now added like an administration section of how it should be administered so that they have like a better standing of like what they're doing as a court system. That will be managing a social media account, registering it as a Silk student organization, maintaining and approving use of judicial brand funds for the campaign resource closet, which will be touched on in the elections code here. Coordinating to accomplish tasks throughout the year in an effective manner, and also ensuring cases arrive in the right place. Constitutional Court has jurisdiction over cases involving the Constitution and any legislation for the Student Senate, has appellate jurisdiction of cases involving decisions made by the Student Elections Commission. For example, election violations, deciding if the court decided constitutionally whether something was a violation or not, based upon the process. Members of the court has the same 3 members for the Constitutional Court here. Those are basically just going to be transferred over from what we have in the Court of Appeals this year. Special responsibilities to review legislation whenever they have the time throughout the semester shall be the court of first and final redress if a student believes that the Student Senate official or body has overstepped their authority and or committed a violation of the Constitution. This was already in the document as well, but was under the executive branch for some reason. Thought that it should be brought here since this actually relates to this court's job. And then it shows like the decisions that can be made in those situations. Then we have the Student Elections Commission, obviously the body responsible for managing the student general elections for freshmen, and then eventually the general one in the spring here. A lot of the same things that you would see in the regulations for the court, but have now been brought to the court, to the Constitution here. And then finally here, we also have rules of procedure for Student Senate judicial proceedings. This didn't used to be in the Constitution. It was in the regulation document outside of it. And even in that regulation document, they had like a ton of different proceeding things that they would do for election violations versus a regular court case for some reason. What this has done is basically created a single process for how these court cases will go across the board, and makes it a lot easier for students to navigate if they ever get into a situation of, you know, like addressing an election violation or feeling that a student senate, you know, like for example, if I passed legislation without quorum and then like allowed that to be signed by the president, that should be something that gets questioned. And they're like, no, there wasn't quorum, so that legislation isn't valid, and the court could deal with that. Title V, the budget code, we didn't really do much change to that, did we? Let's see, what was the next title we were going up to?
Are there any questions about the judicial before we move on to our final title to review?
Yeah. None.
All
Cool.
right. So yeah, before we do go to that one, the budget code, as we mentioned, no major changes per request of like the treasurer, the finance chair, just some corrections of some inconsistencies, wording, appendixes that don't exist, all of this stuff. So and it just, you have no idea how this budget looks like currently, like format wise, it is so hard to follow. So we're just making it super clear. All of the, you know, allocation process, all of it, times, all of this. So yeah, there's no real changes here to the budget code.
Other than bringing the org compliance policy out of an appendix into the budget code. In fact, really the most major change to budgetary operations for Student Senate under this Constitution is a lot of the exemptions under appendices and like other rules that were sort of like shadowly implemented into the Constitution outside of the authority of the budget code have now been placed back into it. And so it creates like a more holistic way of like how we view how we spend Senate money.
Any questions regarding the budget code or the formatting? All right, then we will move on to our final title that did receive major structural changes, and this is the Elections Code. And yeah, Ethan, you can.
So the purpose and scope of the Elections Code really stems from, you know, like the history of the Elections Code and like what it's been utilized in Senate for in previous years, that it shall be construed to promote a fair, free, and equitable electoral process where all candidates and students in elections agree to follow this Elections Code and accept the consequences of potentially violating any part of the Elections Code. And so special obligations of the Student Elections Commission are fairly, you know, similar to what was previously in the judicial area, but brought brought here because oftentimes we send the Student Senate elections code out to all interested candidates in a very like singular format so that they're able to, like just what's happening in the election code and like not have to read other parts of the document immediately. The election schedule, this used to be in several parts of the election code, but now we have moved the first year fall elections and spring elections under the same article so that you can see exactly how elections are going to run for the entire year in one space there. Qualifications for office haven't changed. One thing that we have removed is campaigning regulations during the course of the election week. Quite honestly, especially like when we look at like tech being utilized in elections, we don't really want to see like the courts having to regulate messaging and calling and sort of like discussing like, am I going to vote for a candidate or am I not? Like, honestly, that's not really the court's business to get into. And so what we're now doing is basically having Student Senate not manage campaigning in that way. And instead it's just, going to be managing like making sure that your campaigning is happening appropriately, not that it's happening at all. Because quite honestly, we need campaigning during the elections week to get students involved in the election. And I think that's something we can all agree on. And then what we have down here as well is regulations for the spring elections. And this is where we also introduce the fact that campaign finance has now been taken out of the document entirely. We think that campaign finance presents a lot of issues, especially for the courts in determining like the money that comes into the election and determining like what money is appropriate versus what money isn't appropriate, what resources are appropriate versus what ones are not appropriate. Creates a lot of like banter basically upon like what's appropriate in a Student Senate election, when we could very simply have something like this, the campaign resource closet, which all candidates will be allowed to utilize during Student Senate elections. And this would be funded by like a fund that's already possessed by the judicial branch for elections and sort of providing outreach for those elections. And so, yeah.
And this, besides like just the problem with the confusion of the finances and everything, this is also making sure that it is equitable. Maybe a candidate that is running for president could find the money to fund their campaign by contacting one person. And maybe another candidate would have to do so much more in order to find funds for their campaign. And so we don't think it's fair that the success of a campaign should be determined on like the privilege of a person and their ability to access funds versus just being able to use funds equitably, regardless of who you are, how much money you have, how much money the friends you have. It's all going to be like equitable and accessible for anyone that wants to run for president, but is scared of not having the funds to run a campaign.
Thank you for that, Humberto. And this could be anything, like we really just put like what we see mostly in KU campaigns, the sidewalk chalk, poster board markers, cardstock buttons, button makers, things like that, have in the office, and sort of like also develop a sense of community while we're campaigning, and that, these actions are going to be happening. We're going to be creating stuff for our campaigns, and we're going to like allow basically a better relationship, I think, to develop between candidates than we have seen in years past. We also ended up, so this originally used to be under the job description of the graduate student body president. It's now been brought into the elections code, just how you select the grad student body president. We talked with GSAB and sort of discussed vigorously like how they would like to continue, whether they would like to have an election or whether they would like to have a sort of hiring process, since this is a GA position that has over, I think, $20,000 in funding for the position. And so making sure that that's a rigorous process for folks and something that is like, having to go through GSAB for graduate representation is something that's important here. And then for general campaigning regulations, not much has changed other than, of course, like what we referenced earlier there. We also like specifically there was this rule about like student housing and like prohibiting anyone from posting in student housing unless they get approval. But it's basically the exact same as this rule because student housing is a private property owner. So we took that out because quite honestly, like not only is it just like a double rule, but also Student Senate courts shouldn't be having to enforce housing policy because it's not really their area of expertise at all. Digital campaigning, pretty much the exact same, encouraging potential voters to participate in Student Senate elections. This really just brings up like rules that have already been enforced by the courts in years previous, that once someone is on their ballot, you cannot speak with them as a candidate because that could be construed as voter intimidation. And then basically the other parts of this process are pretty much the exact same, how you would submit a violation, except now it's, to the Student Elections Commission and the new judicial system there. Vote recount and runoff elections, pretty much the exact same. Student coalitions are new. So basically what we've seen in Student Senate is basically we see a reformation of student coalitions, or lack thereof, like being brought through every single year. And while that does create, you know, like an area in which students can like really explore like what they want to do in the spring, it doesn't create an area for like continuous advocacy and progress on Student Senate platforms. And so what this student coalition system creates is it allows student coalitions to exist outside of the election term to be something that affects Student Senate day to day. And so like in terms of like campaigning issues, for example, mental health care, a student coalition can champion that and continue to champion that throughout the year and like what they would like to see for that. And this also creates an area in which students will know what's going on in university politics a lot better. Like people always construed partisanship as a really bad thing. It's something that's very divisive in a chamber, but also partisanship is something that is like the biggest key to students of like what's going on in government. And so by having student coalitions present, we will be able to, you know, hopefully also get more students involved in knowing what's going on in the government and what decisions are going to be made by either coalition. It creates an area of transparency that we don't have currently in the Student Senate structure here. And then student coalition regulations, this sort of cements like the right for like candidates to affiliate with a coalition. We sort of didn't see that last semester because on accident, this legislative body amended out student coalitions from the elections code system. What this allows here is a list of affiliated candidates to be sent to the Elections Commission within the time frame of the election schedule to then allow themselves to, you know, be represented as a part of that coalition, something that keys off voters as well. And then the right to affiliate, which is the final part of this elections code, is stating that basically for folks to be a member of a coalition, they also have the right to have any of their coalition sort of designations put on Student Senate websites, forums, and or documents. And if a senator would like to update their affiliation, they would contact the Internal Affairs Director via email. And so with that, that's sort of like a summary of the elections code. Do we have questions?
Camden?
So let's talk about the resource closet.
Yeah.
Is there going to be some agents who's tasked with ensuring that that's stocked, that isn't getting overrun, that there aren't problems?
Yeah, as I mentioned previously, it's one of the roles in the administration of the Student Senate courts that the Student Elections Commission chair and the person in charge of the Constitutional Court are going to basically be responsible for managing those judicial funds and then making sure the campaign resource closet is filled before the freshman and spring general election.
So does that include during the course of the elections? Like what happens if this runs out?
If it runs out?
Like during election week?
During election week. Oh, that would be simply like something that like Student Senate would have to like consider, like the funding that gets allocated to it.
So let's say in a hypothetical election week, the closet runs out on day 2 and Student Senate can't convene until next week, then it would just stay empty for the entirety of
Well,
election
no, it'd be
week?
something that's under the jurisdiction of the Treasurer's Office in terms of like managing those funds that go to the judicial branch because it's run through a SOFIS account. And probably Hamad could get more into the details of like how those funds are transferred there, or maybe Sadie as well, I don't know. But yeah.
I can talk a little bit real quickly. If this SSRR passes, then we would bring a bill through Student Senate that would transfer monies from Student Senate. Like it would be a line item bill basically. And it would, we would start putting the Elections Commission, I believe that's where the SOFIS account currently is under, we would put them in line item and that funding would get transferred every year. So I'm just going to throw a number out there. $5,000 every year would be allocated from the line item bill to that account. The account currently does have money in it, so I'm not worried about it right now. And we do have some supplies already, like chalk already in the Senate office. We just need to find the space, and we will need to order like a button maker probably. But it is a good concern to bring up, Camden, just because that funding would be allocated from Student Senate as part of the line item bill every year. It just this spring, it might show up on a Wednesday night bill. And that would be just to put more money into the account. They do have, I believe, $1,000 at least in the account right now, so I'm not really worried. And there would not be an emergency bill or anything coming through. It would just be a normal Wednesday night bill. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I was unaware that this would be under the line item categorization, so I appreciate both of those responses, y'all.
Yeah, so just to add on to that, Elections Commissions is considered like a separate student organization in Rock Chalk Central, just like most other advisory boards are.
All right. Oh, well, Sadie, I think someone else has a question in the chat. I think it's Martine.
I can't see it, so I'll trust you. Martine.
Question, yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you, Sadie. Thank you, Humberto. My question is if we can revisit the point that was brought up in the Student Rights Committee when this was first reviewed. I do worry about the lack or maybe, restricting coalitions' abilities to be creative and innovative during the campaign season. And I think utilizing some funds for that allows for, when in the past when students were able to raise at least $1,000 maximum of $1,000, they could do with what they want with that money. And I know a lot of coalitions, either fund T-shirts or they find creative ways to get people involved or, partner with restaurants, etc., to do those kinds of things. And so, having a closet where it's, I agree with the whole equitable and making sure that everyone has a fair shot at being able to run, but at the same time, like, I don't want to restrict coalitions' abilities to be able to find a new way to engage students or increase voter turnout or make their coalition stand out than the others. And so I just wanted to bring that up and see if we could maybe provide a certain percentage of the money that goes to the closet to allow coalitions to utilize the money how they wish, as long as it still falls under the guidelines and restrictions that we have. Mm-hmm. And that's my question.
Yeah, so the only that is a great point. It does giving the money directly for them to figure it out. So here we're only mostly saying that they're prohibiting from utilizing outside funding. So if for some reason the closet doesn't offer something that a candidate's really trying to implement, they can this closet involves monetary resource too. So I guess they wouldn't be limited to only using items like clothes or chalk and stuff, but they also will be able to use funds, just not outside. They're not going to be able to fundraise on their own, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. May I ask a follow-up, Sadie?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. And so, I mean, I just don't see it stipulated. How would those funds be how would students be able to access those funds? What happens if, we have an exec staff that may be biased against a certain coalition and they don't let that coalition know that, hey, there's these funds there, it's all this closet. Coalitions may not know that there is this other set aside money, or maybe I'm misunderstanding it all. But yeah, I just...
Thank you for that, Martine. So the executive staff is not the one who's going to be in charge of this closet. It will be the Student Elections Commission in consultation with the Constitutional Court under this Constitution. So it's fully managed under the authority of the judicial branch and that funding stream. And so and with that, the judicial branch, these courts are already sort of obligated to do that outreach and do the outreach to campaigns as well. And so being able to fill this campaign closet really does become a sort of communal effort as coalitions sort of say what they would like to do for campaigning. That'll basically amount to what the order is for the closet in the spring and fall.
Okay. Gotcha.
And in terms of clarifying language, maybe you're right there we could add another term where we make it more clear that this is also a possibility. Because I do realize we just put the items without making clear that someone could use funds too. So that is a friendly that most definitely can be added.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ethan. Humberto.
Thank you.
Next up in the speaking order, I have Hamad and then Wesley.
Just quick question. Is there a minimum signature requirement to be on the ballot for the presidential/vice presidential candidates?
You know what? That is a great change that we definitely didn't bring up. So yeah, there is no longer a signature requirement for candidates. It's something that we've seen over the course of COVID elections that we haven't been requiring student signatures. But before these COVID elections, the Student Senate Judicial Branch actually had to go through the signatures of each candidate and sort of count them down and make sure that every signature was valid from that student and had a valid student ID number as well. What this creates is basically opens up candidate positions for folks who want to come in regardless of signature caps, because also for people who aren't involved with Student Senate, they have literally potentially no idea of what sort of is involved in collecting those signatures and how they're supposed to go about it and collecting it within the Student Senate community here. So by opening this up, we're allowing more students to get involved in the election once again than we have previously, and it creates a better process for us all because Student Senate needs that engagement and it needs students to be coming here sort of in droves, and having a stipulation that sort of signifies you have to get 500 signatures to run for president, vice president doesn't seem sort of paramount to that mission.
Follow up.
Granted.
So what's stopping like 100 students from running for student body president and vice president and then misusing the storage cabinet and just taking everything and using everything?
Oh, well, I really hope 100 students don't run. And I mean, I don't know, like that's a situation that we definitely didn't envision happening. But if you believe it is definitely something that could happen and that we should be more clear in our stipulations, then that definitely can be added. Especially like I see your concern of like not having signatures kind of just opens the door for anyone. But
I think both of us are on the same page. Thank you.
Okay. Sounds good. Sorry, say that.
Wesley?
This is more so a question about, I guess, the answer to Martine's question, which is, wouldn't the section where it says the closet shall include, but not be limited to, already allow students to just request stuff under the current language? So just like say, hey, I would like to be able to make t-shirts with a t-shirt press or something, then they can look into that. So wouldn't that already be like a mechanism in the current language?
Yeah, and that's what Umberto alluded to, that this was like a friendly amendment, because exactly that's what that language is supposed to imply. But if we can add language that, sort of stipulates that in a clearer way, then it's something that I think we should do.
Naya, did you have a...
Yeah, I just was gonna say too, I just gonna say like to the point of thank you. I just was gonna say too, like to the point of like the signature requirement. I think at the end of the day, like if we're concerned about like equity on this campus, like it should be open to any student to run. Like I wasn't majorly involved in Senate before I got in this position. I ran and thankfully was like voted into this office. And I think every student should have the opportunity to do that. And I think also as well is a lot of the times it's, you're getting the signatures before you're even starting like the official campaigning. And so it's like you're gaining student support, but then what you're advocating for, once you like may get into that position, maybe something that, maybe 100 of your students actually don't support. So, it's kind of like, I think it's a situation where like the signature is not being required. One, I think makes it more equitable for students all around to run. But then I also think that gives those students the opportunity to then begin campaigning and, speaking on the initiatives that they want to speak on. And then ultimately at the end of the day, the student vote will ultimately decide in who's going to be in office and who's not.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Naya. That was all the election
Are
cards?
there further questions on the floor?
Oh, I guess I also wanted to add something. As like is alluded to in their administrative powers here, the courts will sort of like have the jurisdiction over these funds. And so if they do see misuse, can sort of call that out and like, sort of like attach that to the appropriate people like who might be abusing the closet. But like, once again, it's sort of like one of those things where you can predict it en masse, but at the end of the day, like when we look at involvement in student senate elections as they have been, it's something that shouldn't be seen as like a primary problem for like that purpose, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And with that, we do conclude all the sections that talked about the major structural changes in the Senate. Everything else, as mentioned, stays pretty much the same. It's just a reorganization. We really, first of all, appreciate y'all being here and listening to this whole spiel. This would be very historic if we are able, as a student body, to finally get a new governing document that is not perfect, and I'm going to say that right away, and will never be perfect. So like, don't expect this document to be perfect for us to pass it. This document is very functional, and it really enhances our ability to advocate for students on campus. Passing it would be a very big deal, especially because this had been tried in the past, and it would feel like, imagine being part of the Senate that was able to get this new governing document that's going to be used for decades to come, and with whatever changes might need to come as the semester goes. But yeah, so this is truly something historic, and we appreciate you all. We appreciate the dedication for all the folks that helped writing this, and just being here and asking questions and being so attentive.
Holly?
Yep.
Yeah, you can. I see a second from Farsad. Is there any objection?
Yeah, no, I'm relinquishing speaker time, so.
Perfect.
I have a sort of point of order. It's still technically like 3 bills.
Oh,
but to avoid
quite right.
giving the rights, we should maybe call a question on all 3 bills.
So I do have like, okay, I'm just sort of gonna go through like a line of like how I can envision this all being passed in a very easy, comprehensive way. And I sort of did email this to Umberto ahead of this meeting here. See, oh, no, that's your personal. See, I'm gonna go ahead and stop presenting.
You can read the
I can freeze it?
projector.
How so?
There's like a button that says freeze.
Oh, perfect. Cool. All right.
Honestly, y'all can read my email.
It's not that I don't know. Is this the Senate cause email, Umberto, or is it the COS email or the student email of yours?
Is it a black background or a white background?
Black.
Oh, that's my student email.
Okay. Here, another mailbox.
What are you looking for?
I sent an email to you through your chief of staff email.
Oh. Oh, there we go.
Perfect.
Awesome. Okay, now I'm free to now.
Okay.
So
So,
that's the actual bill.
yeah. So this is the actual front line of the bill here. Whereas the Student Senate rules and regulations are outdated and lacking proper enforceability, whereas the Student Senate rules and regulations are overly complicated and create accessibility issues within the Student Senate space for current and new members, and whereas the students deserve a government that can be held accountable to student interest, therefore be it established under this new constitution. This is basically just stipulating that all of the roles will remain the same. That's kind of already present in certain terms of the new governing document, but this just outlines it so people have that sort of security there in their positions. Therefore, be it established that these rules will take effect on the 2nd here, so like right after it could be passed by this chamber, and then consolidation of legislation. So basically what I would be looking for is a motion to amend the legislation to basically be the entirety of the Student Senate Constitution. So yeah, Holly? Yeah, perfect. See a second from Faith. Oh, yeah, I'm not chair anymore. Umberto, I think you would actually, since you stepped down. Oh, no, she's still a senator. Cool. All right.
Okay. All right. It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any opposition on the chamber to?
Will I share the screen? Oh, is it not? Oh, right. Quite right.
Yeah. Is there any opposition on the chamber to calling this bill to amend our SSRR so
No,
that it
not
becomes
the
a
bill.
constitution?
Yeah. Okay, so we're amending the bill first. So we are amending the bill to basically be this entire document.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so.
Awesome. So that's been properly moved and seconded. Any opposition for amending it so that it's like the entirety of the document? All right. Seeing none, then we are going to go ahead and vote on this amendment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we do need to vote on the. Well, I'm going to need. Yeah.
You know, actually, I'm not speaking anymore. I can take this.
Okay. Yeah.
Because people are just motioning at me now. Oh, you know what? This microphone is just not here for me tonight, quite honestly.
Also, we probably might, at the beginning of the semester, have like a physical copy printed and have like all of the senators sign it so that it's just more symbolical, so that everyone who participated in this approval process is remembered for the eternity.
Go down in history.
What an honor.
The first SRE ever.
All right, that has now been posted in the general here. Do you approve the amendment to Senate Bill 2022-33? Yes, if you would like to approve this amendment. No, if you would not like to, and abstain if you shall.
That is so great.
All right, the vote is still open here on the Teams for folks who need to vote on the issue. So if you could get those in promptly, we are one vote here away from quorum, so please make sure to get those in. All right, and with that, has everyone had the chance to vote on this matter who would like to do so? All right, seeing no objections, I will move to close the vote here. Oh, still got one more vote in there, but all right, closing that out. And with a vote of 36 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, or 1 in the negative, and 1 abstention, this motion clearly passes. All right. So now we voted on the amendment. Now do I see a motion to vote on the bill? Well, we're voting on the bill. Yeah. Still a couple of things. All right, Holly? Second from Stu, all right. All right, and with that, that is now dropped in the general. Do you approve Senate Bill 2022-03 3. Yes, if you would like to approve this bill, no, if you would not like to, and abstain if you would like to abstain from the discussion. All right, and I'll let that vote run for about another minute here.
Oh, yeah, I did. I was like,
All right, has everyone in the chamber and on the teams had the chance to vote on this matter that can do so? All right, seeing no objections here, we'll now move to end this poll here. And with a vote of 35 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative, and 0 abstentions, this motion clearly passes.
Thank you all so much.
Amazing job, y'all.
Yeah.
Really, you guys, they spent the whole semester working so hard. So, like, John Burton.
Yeah, take the pause. It was brought to my attention here that we do have one final item of business before we exit out of this chamber here. That is to confirm our new GovRel director. So yeah, Faith, if you want to come, introduce yourself, you may do so. And I'm going to go ahead and do I see a motion to confirm that I can just set up the vote with? See a motion from Camden, see a second from Farzad. Perfect.
Hi, my name is Faith Lopez. I use she, they pronouns. I'm a sophomore in the School of Social Welfare. I'm super excited. I appreciate everyone sticking it out for this long meeting. Usually we like to say it's short, but we always lie to ourselves. So I hope everyone takes winter break to just take care of themselves. And please, please, please feel free to stop by my office. I have little candies too, the little strawberry ones that if you are Hispanic, like those grandmas always have them. So I do have those, but I also have peppermint. So feel free to stop by. I have office hours, or you can email me. Thank you so much, and I'm very excited to work with all of you.
Thank you for that, Faith. All right, the vote is now live since there were no objections. So please vote to confirm Faith Lopez as our new GovRel director. Yes, if you approve. No, if you would not like to approve, and abstain if you would like to stay out of the discussion.
I actually have a bill to bring into committee as a whole.
Bill to reinstate.
It's up to you all if you go to committee of the whole or not.
All right, y'all, two more votes to get this done with. And Sadie, while we let the vote complete, you said you had an announcement you'd like to make?
Yes, I do. This announcement is of the positive nature because I just think that Student Senate should be a more uplifting space. And so I just thought it'd be fun to share this with you all. But our very own Sophia Pacenti was selected for a really, really difficult to get into environmental internship for the next year. And so it's really cool, really big deal. So everyone give her a round of applause.
Thank you.
Oh. There we go. Thank you.
Well, but that's up to you all if you go into committee of the whole or not. So I'm gonna tell you he has a bill, but I don't know if he's joking or not.
We still need one more vote here for the confirmation. Oh,
No, it's 35 because that was quorum.
no, 36. Oh, wait, no, Faith is out now, so. Oh, actually, it is 35 since Faith is now no longer a senator officially. So.
Yay.
Or wait, no, she's still a senator until this confirmation happens. Yeah,
I guess one more vote, folks. One more vote.
yeah. Oh, gosh. I do.
Could you double check see if I recorded my vote?
Yes, but.
Yeah, none of the vice students wanted to. That way we can do over break. People produce something. Yeah. I mean, it's like a lot of
If you know of someone that left, could just come to validate this one vote that we're missing. We would really appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah, unless we get this vote, Senate won't be able to consent to this until next spring. Brilliant. So we now have quorum. Anyone who hasn't voted yet? I'm imagining not. All right. So I'm going to move to end this poll here. And with a confirmation vote of 35 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative, and 0 abstentions, this motion clearly passes. All right. Sadie has a motion.
To move into committee of the whole.
Move into committee of the whole.
It's super quick.
Second from Camden. Is there any objection in this chamber from moving into committee of the whole?
It's important stuff.
This one's really important, guys.
All right. Seeing no objections, we are now officially in committee of the whole. Hamad, you have the floor.
This is a very fast bill. Basically giving Sadie the right to appoint her committee that is not fully filled, just the vacant positions. I'm looking for a motion to get out of committee as a whole so we can debate.
All right, a motion from Sadie to exit committee of the whole now that this bill has been presented. I see a second from, oh God, where? Sorry, Julia, yes. Gabby Fisher. Oh, right. Oh my gosh, these masks. Okay, yeah, so a second from Gabby here. Any objections to exiting committee of the whole? All right, seeing none, we are, yeah, call to question. Second from Sadie. All right, first from Camden, second from Sadie. All right, and any objection to calling this bill into question? All right, seeing none, we will now move to a vote. So without the numbering here, this will be titled, do you approve the amendment to allow the finance chair to appoint vacant seats to the RCF for fiscal year 23? Yes, if you approve, no, if you would not like to approve, and abstain if you would like to stay out of the discussion.
Is that where the gorgeous?
Also like to say thank y'all for, making this a really great last session here for cycle 7. I know that this will lead to a lot of great things to happen in next semester's session here.
I thought he was they were referencing like the person in the back.
Honestly,
I was sitting here and then I feel like I've done that all semester.
wait a minute, I did last week, and then I forgot.
All right, 6 more votes to approve this. 5 more now.
5 more.
Oh, or 3 more actually, because yeah, Faith is now Governor Director, so quorum is now 35. We have a very insistent finance chair and treasurer, so that bodes well for support. 2 more votes. 1 more vote.
Uno más.
Zachary Nielsen. All right, and with that, we have 35. Anyone in the chamber who hasn't had the ability to vote that can do so? Seeing none, all right. And with that, with 35 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 0 abstentions, this bill clearly passes. Do I see a motion to adjourn? I see a motion from Eric. I see a second from Gabby. All right. Any objection to adjournment of this meeting? Seeing none, we are officially adjourned. Have a great winter break.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Good luck with finals.
Yeah, good luck. Oh, no, actually, my thank you so much.
Probably great break. I'll see you in January.
Yeah.
I work in the Okay, that's what.
So, yeah.
I remember seeing, I'm trying to remember if you had the. Because I was gonna say, I'm gonna work in the, I'm gonna be here. Are you interested? Being part of, Thank you. Also, yeah.
Really bad. Like the bus is barely even coming.
Okay, then maybe we should.
Yeah, and definitely since we're already coming in with a break,
My mom, she got a PhD.
Very great.
Yeah, no,
It's like really wanted to know like Oh my god, I know. Oh my god.
You guys want a picture?
Oh, we should get a picture. Yeah, but I want to like, let's sit down like this.
Self-adjusted here.
Camera's not working. I just wanted to tell you, fabulous work you do.
Thank you.
You should be really, really proud of yourself.
Thank you so much for all the help and support.
Yeah, as far as I can tell, you accomplished something that hasn't been able to be done for several years now. So you should be very, very.
Thank you all for joining us. We'll be signing off this meeting now here. It def is, yeah. Until I go into the office to turn off the stream, it records.